She spent $180,000 building a pool on my land. I didn't stop her. I let her pour the concrete, install the deck, hook up the filtration system, and throw a grand opening party for the whole neighborhood. Then I showed her the deed. The HOA president had been fining me $500 a day for a driveway she claims sat on community property. She demolished it without a court order, without a real survey, and without checking who actually owned the land underneath. What she built in its place, a resort-style gunite pool paid for with HOA funds, and her brother-in-law's inflated construction contract, now belongs to me. The court confirmed it. The county inspector shut her down at a meeting in front of 94 homeowners. And the pool she thought would make her legacy? I charged $200 a season and put half the money into a scholarship named after my late wife. Some people play stupid games. Some people win swimming pools. Where are you watching from? The first time I saw the house on Ridgefield Lane, Ellen was still alive. Barely. She sat in the passenger seat with a blanket over her knees and pointed through the windshield at the red brick front and the big oak in the yard. "That one," she said. "Lily needs a tree like that." We never moved in together. Ellen died 14 days later, on a Tuesday morning, while our daughter slept in the next room. She was 38. I sold our old place 6 months after the funeral. Too many echoes. Too many doorways where I expected to see her standing. Lily and I packed what mattered into a U-Haul and drove south to San Antonio, to the house Ellen picked from a hospital bed. Ridgefield Estates was 147 homes, spread across a sun-bleached stretch of northwest Bexar County. Cookie-cutter stucco, HOA-approved earth tones, and lawns so uniform they looked like they came off a conveyor belt. But the oak tree was real, and the street was quiet, and the elementary school was a 7-minute walk. That was enough. The first summer, I built the driveway. Not the standard gray slab the builder poured for every other house on the block. I ripped that out and replaced it with stamped concrete. A riverstone pattern Ellen found in a design magazine during her last round of chemo. She dog-eared the page and wrote, "For our new house," in the margin with a purple pen. I still have that magazine. I mixed the concrete myself, laid the forms in the July heat while Lily sat on the porch steps drawing pictures of butterflies. The wet cement smelled like chalk and rain. My knees ached for a week afterward. But every morning when I backed out of that driveway, I drove over something Ellen touched. That was worth every blister. Brenda Carmichael showed up the day we moved in. A white Cadillac Escalade rolled to a stop at the curb, and out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been president of everything since middle school. Blonde hair sprayed into a helmet, linen blazer over yoga pants, oversized sunglasses pushed up on her forehead like a crown. She carried a clipboard the way a general carries a sidearm. "Welcome to Ridgefield. I'm Brenda Carmichael, HOA president." She didn't smile. She inventoried. Her eyes swept the moving boxes on the lawn, the scuff marks on the front door, my work boots. "Here's your compliance packet. Trash bins go behind the fence by 7 a.m. Lawn height is 3 inches maximum, and that mailbox color is going to be a problem." I nodded, took the packet, and watched her Escalade glide away trailing a cloud of perfume so thick it lingered on the porch for an hour. 6 months later, the letter arrived. Official HOA letterhead, bold font, red, urgent stamp across the top. It informed me that my driveway encroached 12 feet into designated HOA common area, and that I had 30 days to remove the encroachment or face daily fines of $500. I read it twice. Then I pulled out the property survey from my closing documents, the one prepared by a licensed surveyor and filed with the county. My driveway sat entirely within my property lines, every inch of it. I checked before I poured a single bag of concrete, because that's what civil engineers do. I replied by email, polite and precise, attaching the survey. Brenda's response came the next morning. "The HOA's records supersede your personal survey. You have 30 days. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan while Lily slept in the next room. The fan clicked on every third rotation. Outside, a mockingbird ran through its whole playlist in the dark. I whispered to the empty side of the bed. "They're coming after your driveway, Ellen." Something was wrong. Nobody fights a homeowner over a driveway by ignoring deed records. Not unless they want that land for something else. The fine started on a Monday. $500 a day, automatically applied to my HOA account. By Friday, I owed $2,500 for a driveway that sat on my own land. I pulled up the CC&Rs that night, all 47 pages of small print that every homeowner signs and nobody reads. I went through them line by line with a highlighter and a pot of coffee. There was nothing in those documents that gave the HOA authority to claim a homeowner's deeded property. Not one clause, not one subsection. The CC&Rs covered paint colors, fence heights, holiday decorations, and 17 different rules about lawn maintenance. But they said absolutely nothing about redrawing property lines. Here's something most people don't realize. In Texas, an HOA cannot unilaterally claim land that has been deeded to a homeowner. They can enforce aesthetic standards. They can levy fines for rule violations. But they cannot take your land without a court order or a legitimate survey proving encroachment. Brenda's letter wasn't enforcement. It was theft, dressed up in letterhead. I went to the next board meeting. Ridgefield's meetings were held in the community center, a beige box that smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. About 30 homeowners showed up, which I'd later learn was unusually high. Word had gotten around about the driveway situation, and people wanted to see what would happen. I stood up during open comments and laid it out clearly. I held up my property survey, the one filed with Bexar County at closing, and explained that my driveway fell entirely within my lot boundaries. I asked Brenda to produce the HOA's survey showing the alleged encroachment. She didn't blink. That survey is outdated, Mr. Tillman. The HOA commissioned its own boundary assessment, and it clearly shows your concrete extends into common area. May I see it? That's an internal document. It's not subject to homeowner review. I looked around the room. 4 other board members sat at the folding table behind her. Not one of them made eye contact. Not one of them asked a follow-up question. They just stared at their laps like kids who knew the teacher was wrong, but were too scared to say it. I sat down. The meeting moved on to a discussion about acceptable mulch colors. Afterward, in the parking lot, a hand caught my elbow. I turned and found Cal Henderson, a wiry, sun-weathered man in his late 60s who lived 3 houses down. Cal had retired from the Bexar County Clerk's office after 30 years of filing deeds, liens, and property records. He knew more about land documents than most attorneys. "Son, walk with me a minute." We stopped under the parking lot's single mercury lamp. Crickets screamed from the drainage ditch behind the building. The air smelled like warm asphalt and cut grass. "She pulled the same trick on the Websters 3 years ago," Cal said quietly. "Told them their back patio encroached on a drainage easement. Fined them $400 a day until they couldn't take it. They sold their house at a loss and moved to Bernie." "And nobody stopped her?" Cal shrugged. "She controls the board. Her husband sits on the county planning commission. People are afraid of her, Garrett. She's been running this neighborhood like her personal kingdom for 8 years, and nobody's ever pushed back hard enough to matter." I stared at the community center's fluorescent-lit windows. Inside, Brenda was shaking hands and laughing with someone near the coffee station. "I'm not the Websters," I said. Cal studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "No, I don't think you are." The next week, Brenda sent an email blast to all 147 households. The subject line read, "Community Standards Update." The body was 3 paragraphs of carefully worded poison. It described an unnamed homeowner who was refusing to cooperate with planned community improvements and prioritizing personal convenience over neighborhood standards. She didn't use my name. She didn't have to. The shift was immediate. The Pattersons across the street stopped waving. The Kellys next door stopped letting their kids play with Lily in the front yard. At the school pickup line, 3 mothers I'd been friendly with suddenly found their phones very interesting whenever I walked by. Lily noticed before I did. One evening she looked up from her coloring book and asked, "Daddy, why did Mrs. Patterson stop waving at us?" I didn't have an answer. Not one I could give a 9-year-old. Brenda wasn't just fighting over a driveway. She was running a playbook. Isolate the target. Turn the community against them. Make them feel so unwelcome that leaving seems easier than fighting. It had worked on the Websters. She expected it to work on me. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Brenda called a special session. She stood at the front of the community center with a projector, a laser pointer, and a stack of glossy brochures that smelled like fresh ink and ambition. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to present the Ridgefield Estates Community Pool Project." The screen behind her showed a rendered image of a resort-style pool. Turquoise water, stone deck, lounge chairs, a waterfall feature. It looked like something out of a boutique hotel in Scottsdale. The crowd murmured with genuine excitement. San Antonio summers hit 105 degrees, and Ridgefield had never had a pool. Brenda knew exactly what button to push. She clicked to the next slide. Location: the reclaimed common area adjacent to 1847 Ridgefield Lane. My address: the same strip of land she claimed my driveway was encroaching on. The strip she'd been fining me $500 a day over. That wasn't a boundary dispute. It was real estate acquisition disguised as code enforcement. The budget slide came next. Total project cost: $180,000. Funding: a combination of HOA reserve funds and a special assessment of $1,200 per household. Contractor: Lanford Construction LLC. She said the name like she was introducing a keynote speaker at a charity gala. Nobody in that room connected the dots. Nobody asked who Lanford Construction was or how they'd been selected. Nobody asked if the project had gone through competitive bidding. They were too busy imagining cold water on a 100-degree day. I wrote the name down on the back of my brochure and went home. That night, after Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and typed Lanford Construction San Antonio into Google. The results led me to a bare-bones website with a few project photos and a contact page listing the owner, Todd Lanford. I searched Todd Lanford on Facebook. Third photo in his timeline: a 4th of July barbecue. Todd at a grill with a Lone Star in his hand. Next to him, arm around his shoulder, was Douglas Carmichael, Brenda's husband. 2 posts down, a Christmas dinner. Todd, Douglas, and Brenda at the same table. Matching sweaters, champagne raised. Caption: family time with the best brother-in-law a guy could ask for. Todd Lanford was Brenda's brother-in-law. She'd handed a $180,000 contract to family without disclosure, without competitive bidding, and without a single board member asking why. I screenshot everything. Then I checked comparable pool construction costs in the San Antonio metro area. A gunite pool of that size, 40 by 20, with a standard stone deck, ran between $90,000 and $110,000. Brenda's family contractor was charging nearly double the market rate. The math was ugly, and it pointed in one direction. I saved everything to a folder on my desktop labeled Ridgefield. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and heard the sound before I saw it. A rhythmic, industrial cracking, like someone breaking bones. I turned the corner onto my street and there it was. A Bobcat skid steer with a hydraulic breaker was punching through my driveway. Chunks of stamped concrete flew sideways and landed on the lawn, on the flower bed, on the sidewalk. A worker in an orange vest stood to the side, hosing down dust. And there was Brenda, standing at the edge of my property with her arms crossed and her sunglasses perched on top of her head. She watched the destruction like a woman admiring a renovation. I parked my truck and got out slowly. She turned to me and didn't even bother looking uncomfortable. "Should have moved the concrete when I asked nicely, Mr. Tillman." I didn't respond to her. I looked at the ground. A section of stamped concrete lay face down on the grass, the riverstone pattern Ellen picked. A corner of it had broken clean off, and I could see the impression of a leaf that had fallen into the wet cement the day I poured it. Lily had pressed it in with her thumb and said, "Look, Daddy, it's stuck forever." I took a breath, then another. The diesel exhaust from the Bobcat burned the back of my throat. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and filmed everything. The machine, the workers, the debris, and Brenda's face. She smirked. "Are you done?" "Not even close," I said. Construction started 3 days after the driveway was demolished. A Lanford construction crew rolled in at 6:45 on a Monday morning with a backhoe, 2 dump trucks, and enough PVC pipe to replumb a small town. They tore into the ground where my driveway used to be and started digging a hole the size of a swimming pool, because that's exactly what it was. The noise was constant, from 7 in the morning until 5 in the evening. Every day, the whole block vibrated. My coffee mug danced across the kitchen counter during breakfast. Lily started wearing her headphones to do homework. The framed photo of Ellen on the hallway shelf kept inching toward the edge until I moved it to a drawer, which felt like losing her a second time. The heavy trucks didn't just use the street. They cut across my lawn to reach the work site, grinding ruts into the grass deep enough to twist an ankle in. I photographed the ruts. I photographed the tire tracks. I photographed the pile of rebar and cinder blocks that materialized on my side yard without permission or apology. I sent a written complaint to the HOA board. Brenda's reply was 4 sentences long. "Construction is a community matter. Individual homeowner complaints do not override board decisions. Please direct further correspondence through proper channels. Thank you for your patience. I filed the email. Patience was the one thing I had plenty of. The neighbors, meanwhile, had caught pool fever. People who hadn't spoken to each other in years were suddenly chatting over fences about pool parties and summer barbecues. A few of them brought lemonade to the construction crew. Brenda walked the site every afternoon in different outfits, always with the clipboard, always pointing at things, always making sure everyone knew whose project this was. Nobody asked about the driveway. Nobody asked why a man's property had been torn up to make room for a pool he never approved. In Ridgefield Estates, Brenda's version of events was the only version that mattered, and her version said the driveway was on HOA land. Case closed. But cases don't close because someone with a clipboard says so. At night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started pulling records. County assessor maps, original subdivision plats, HOA articles of incorporation, deed histories for every lot on Ridgefield Lane. This is what civil engineers do for a living. We read surveys, plats, and legal descriptions the way carpenters read blueprints. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, but it's precise. The original subdivision plat for Ridgefield Estates was filed with Bexar County in 2008 when the developer, Greystone Holdings, broke ground. The plat showed every lot, every setback, every easement, and every designated common area. I zoomed in on the section covering my lot, Lot 47, and the strip of land Brenda claimed was common property. What I found made me sit up straighter. The strip wasn't labeled common area. It was labeled Lot 47B Extension, a secondary parcel attached to my lot, sold by the developer to the original homeowner as part of the purchase. I checked the deed chain, the paper trail that tracks ownership through every sale. Greystone Holdings sold Lot 47 and Lot 47B Extension to the first owner in 2009. That owner sold to a second owner in 2015. The second owner sold to me in 2023. The extension transferred every time, attached to the primary lot, exactly as the plat intended. My pulse was running fast now. I pulled up the HOA Articles of Incorporation, the founding document that lists every parcel designated as common area. I searched for Lot 47B. It wasn't there. I searched for extension. Nothing. I searched every page, every exhibit, every appendix. Lot 47B extension had never been HOA common area. Not in 2008, not in 2015, not now. It was my land. It had always been my land. I needed confirmation, a licensed surveyor, and a full deed audit to make it courtroom ready. But I already knew what the paperwork would say. Brenda Carmichael was building a $180,000 pool on my property. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum. Through the window, I could see the construction site, halogen work lights casting a yellow glow on the half-dug hole and the exposed Texas clay. My land, her pool, her money. I needed one more person. I walked 3 houses down and knocked on Cal Henderson's door. He answered in a bathrobe, holding a glass of bourbon. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said. "Come on in." Cal Henderson's kitchen table looked like a county clerk's fever dream. Deed records, plat maps, and HOA filing documents covered every inch of the oak surface. 2 empty bourbon glasses held down the corners of the original subdivision plat like paperweights. "Pull the deed chain from the county recorder," Cal said, tapping the plat with a thick finger. "Not the online version, the stamped originals. And get yourself a licensed surveyor. Not one from San Antonio who might know Douglas, someone from outside the county." I followed his instructions to the letter. The next morning I drove to the Bexar County Recorder's office and requested the complete deed chain for Lot 47 and Lot 47B Extension, Ridgefield Estates subdivision. The clerk pulled 3 manila folders from a filing cabinet and spread the documents on a counter that smelled like old paper and toner. The story was right there in black and white. In 2008, Greystone Holdings filed the plat. Lot 47B Extension was clearly designated as a private residential parcel, not common area, not HOA property. In 2009, Greystone sold it with Lot 47 to a couple named Walsh. In 2015, the Walshes sold to a man named Gruber. In 2023, Gruber sold to me. The extension transferred every time. I'd been paying taxes on it for 2 years. I cross-referenced the HOA's Articles of Incorporation. Every common area parcel was listed by lot number. Lot 47B extension was not on the list. The HOA had never owned it, never maintained it, never paid a dime of taxes on it. Brenda Carmichael was building a $180,000 swimming pool on my land. Not a single person involved in this project had done the one thing you're supposed to do before you build anything: confirm who owns the dirt. Here's what most people don't know. In Texas, when someone builds a permanent structure on your land without your permission, you don't automatically have to tear it down. Under state property law, the landowner can claim ownership of that structure through a quiet title action. If the court confirms the land is yours, everything built on it belongs to you too. The person who paid for the construction doesn't get a refund. They don't get to negotiate. They built on your dirt, and your dirt includes whatever's sitting on top of it. Brenda was about to hand me a free pool. I sat in my truck in the county parking lot and stared at the deed copies on the passenger seat. I had two choices. I could drive straight to the construction site, show the deed to the foreman, and shut the whole project down right now. That would stop the damage. That would be the safe play. Or I could wait. I could let Brenda finish the pool. Let her pour every dollar of HOA money into a structure she'd never own. Let her throw the party, cut the ribbon, and take the credit. And then I could show her whose land she'd been building on. I started the truck and drove home. I had a phone call to make. I needed a lawyer. Janet Pryor's office was on the third floor of a limestone building downtown, the kind of place where the elevator smelled like old brass and the hallways creaked under your weight. She was a real estate litigation attorney with 22 years of practice and a reputation for making developers sweat. Cal recommended her. He said she was the only lawyer in Bexar County who scared him. I spread everything on her conference table: deed chain, plat maps, HOA articles, the survey from my closing, Brenda's violation letters, the fine statements, screenshots of Todd Lanford's Facebook page, and the construction photos I'd been taking every day from my kitchen window. Janet took 30 minutes to read everything. Then she leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "This is the clearest case I've seen in 5 years." She laid out the strategy. First, I'd hire a licensed surveyor to produce a new certified boundary survey, one that would hold up in court without question. Second, once the pool was finished and Brenda had spent every dollar, Janet would file a quiet title action under Texas Property Code Section 22.001. The petition would ask the court to confirm that Lot 47B extension and every structure built on it belonged to me. Third, she'd attach all of Brenda's correspondence, the fabricated fines, and the conflict of interest evidence as exhibits supporting bad faith. The beauty of quiet title, Janet said, tapping the deed chain with her pen, is that the burden shifts to the other side. They have to prove they own the land, and they can't, because they don't. I hired Ray Colburn the next day, a licensed land surveyor out of New Braunfels, 40 miles northeast, far enough from San Antonio that he had no connection to Douglas Carmichael's Planning Commission network. Ray came out on a Thursday morning, set up his total station on the sidewalk, and spent 4 hours shooting points along every property line on my lot. His certified survey confirmed what I already knew. Lot 47B extension was entirely within my deed boundaries. The pool, foundation, plumbing, electrical conduit, all of it, sat 100% on my land. Not 90%, not partially, completely. I put the survey in a fireproof lockbox in my closet. Next came the evidence file. I organized everything chronologically in a 3-ring binder that would eventually become Janet's exhibit package. Every violation notice Brenda had sent me, every email, every fine statement totaling $23,000. The original meeting minutes Cal had kept, the ones showing only 3 of 5 board members voted on the pool project, one short of the quorum required by the CC and Rs, and a copy of the minutes Brenda filed with the county, showing 5 votes out of 5. Full attendance, unanimous approval, 2 phantom votes she invented to make the numbers work. I pulled the building permit application from the county. The permit for the Ridgefield Estates pool was signed by Douglas Carmichael, County Planning Commissioner. The contractor listed on the application was Lanford Construction LLC, owned by Todd Lanford, Douglas's brother-in-law, and Brenda's as well. A public official approved a construction permit for a family member's company on a project organized by his own wife. 3 sentences, 3 ethics violations. The cameras went up on a Saturday while Lily was at a birthday party. 4 wireless units, 2 covering the construction site, 1 on the front porch, 1 on the back fence. Everything recorded to cloud storage with timestamps. If anyone set foot on my property, I'd have it in high definition with a date stamp. Then I started making calls. Cal introduced me to 12 homeowners who'd been on the receiving end of Brenda's enforcement campaigns over the years. I met them one at a time, in living rooms, on back porches, at the Whataburger on Bandera Road over coffee and breakfast burritos. Each one had a story. The Websters, driven out over a fabricated easement dispute. The Wynns, fined $3,000 for installing a basketball hoop their kids played on every afternoon. Old Mr. Kendrick, who received a lien threat for planting tomatoes in his side yard. Every story followed the same pattern. Brenda identifies a target, invents a violation, escalates until they comply or leave. I asked each of them the same question. If I can prove she's been doing this illegally, will you stand with me at a meeting? Every single one said yes. The last call was to Nina Salazar at KSAT 12. I'd seen her investigative segments. She had a talent for making powerful people very uncomfortable on camera. I gave her the basics. An HOA president who awarded a no-bid construction contract to her brother-in-law, whose husband approved the building permit from his county planning office, and who was spending association funds to build a pool on a private homeowner's land. Nina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When can we meet?" I hung up and looked out the kitchen window. The pool was taking shape now. Gunite walls rising from the Texas clay, rebar skeletons reaching toward the fading sky like fingers. Workers shouted to each other in Spanish over the grind of a concrete mixer. It looked expensive. It looked permanent. It looked like mine. The pool was finished on a Saturday in late June. 40 by 20 feet of turquoise gunite, with a stamped stone deck, wrought iron safety fence, and a filtration system that hummed like a small engine. Todd Lanford's crew had done solid work. I had to give them that. They'd built a beautiful pool on my land. Brenda wasted no time. She organized a pool reveal party the following weekend and sent invitations to every household in Ridgefield Estates, every household except mine. The invitation, which Cal forwarded to me with a handwritten note that said, "Hold steady," was printed on cardstock with the HOA logo embossed in gold. It read, "Join us in celebrating a new era for our community. Refreshments provided. Swimwear encouraged." The party was loud. Country music thumped from a rented speaker system. The smell of charcoal and grilled hamburger drifted through my kitchen window and settled into the curtains. Kids screamed and splashed. Adults laughed and clinked beer bottles in the shallow end. Brenda stood poolside in a floral cover-up and gold sandals, giving a speech I could hear through the wall. This pool represents what we can achieve when the community stands together against those who don't share our standards. Not everyone believed in this project, but we proved them wrong. She paused for applause. She got it. Lily pressed her face against her bedroom window and watched the other kids swim. She didn't ask to go. She didn't cry. She just watched with her chin on the windowsill and her breath fogging the glass. That was worse. I closed the blinds and went back to work. The fines hadn't stopped. Brenda was still levying $500 a day against my account for the driveway encroachment, the driveway that no longer existed because she'd demolished it. The total had climbed past $23,000. She'd filed a lien request with the county to secure payment, and in her latest letter, she referenced the possibility of foreclosure proceedings if the balance wasn't resolved. Let me say that again. She destroyed my property, built a pool on my land with other people's money, and was now threatening to take my house to collect fines she made up for a driveway she tore apart. I forwarded the lien filing to Janet Pryor. She responded in 2 words: perfect evidence. Then the meeting minutes surfaced. Cal had kept a personal copy of the original board meeting minutes from the session where the pool project was approved. 30 years as a county clerk will make a man meticulous about records. His copy showed the vote tally: 3 in favor, 0 against, 2 members absent. The CC and Rs required a quorum of 4 out of 5 board members for any capital expenditure exceeding $50,000. 3 votes wasn't enough. The project should never have been approved. The version Brenda filed with the county, the one attached to the building permit application, showed 5 in favor, 0 against, full board attendance, unanimous approval. She'd added 2 votes that didn't exist for board members who weren't in the room. I photographed Cal's original side-by-side with the county filing. Same meeting date, same agenda items, different vote counts. In Texas, filing falsified documents with a government office is a Class A misdemeanor, up to a year in county jail and a $4,000 fine. I added the photos to the binder. Brenda must have sensed something shifting beneath her because she started pressing harder. 3 new violation notices arrived in a single week. My fence was 2 inches above regulation height. My porch light was non-compliant with community lighting standards. My truck was parked at an unapproved angle in the driveway that she demolished. She was fining me for how I parked on rubble she created. She also began calling special board meetings to discuss what she termed ongoing compliance issues with Lot 47. Each meeting was another attempt to build a paper trail thick enough to justify more fines, more liens, more pressure. She wanted me buried in process. She wanted me to drown in paper and disappear the way the Websters did. What she didn't know was that Janet Pryor had already filed the quiet title action. It sat in the Bexar County District Court docket, assigned to Judge Ruth Calloway, waiting for its hearing date. Attached to the petition was everything I'd been collecting since the day that Bobcat cracked my driveway open. The deed chain, the certified survey, the falsified meeting minutes, the conflict of interest documentation, 4 months of construction photographs, the lien filings, and security camera footage showing Lanford Construction operating on my property without my consent. I also filed an ethics complaint against Douglas Carmichael with the County Ethics Board, a planning commissioner who approved a permit for his brother-in-law's company on his wife's project, funded by HOA dues. If that wasn't a conflict of interest, the phrase had no meaning, and Nina Salazar confirmed her story would air the following Thursday. Every thread Brenda had pulled was about to unravel at the same time. She just didn't know it yet. The first crack in Brenda's armor came on a Wednesday afternoon when her phone rang, and a reporter's voice was on the other end. Nina Salazar, from KSAT 12, calling for comment on a story about potential financial irregularities in the Ridgefield Estates Homeowners Association. I wasn't there for the call, but I heard about it within the hour. Cal's wife saw Brenda pacing her front yard afterward, phone pressed to her ear, voice loud enough to carry across the street. She was shouting at someone, Douglas most likely, about a reporter asking questions nobody was supposed to be asking. By Thursday evening, Brenda had called an emergency board meeting. The posted agenda contained one item: a motion to formally expel Garrett Tillman from Ridgefield Estates for conduct detrimental to the community. That's not a real thing, by the way. HO, as in Texas, cannot expel a homeowner from their own property. They can fine you. They can place a lien. They can take you to civil court. But they cannot vote you out of a home you legally own. Brenda either didn't understand this or had stopped caring. Desperation makes people reach for tools that don't exist. She spent the next 3 days working the phones. Every board member, every committee chair, every homeowner she considered loyal. Her pitch was simple. Garrett Tillman was threatening the pool everyone loved, and the community needed to act before he ruined everything. But people were starting to ask questions she couldn't answer. The first sign was Roger Hale, a retired accountant who served on the HOA Finance Committee. Roger submitted a formal records request for the pool project's complete financial accounting. Every invoice, every payment, every receipt. Brenda told him the records were being compiled and would be available at the appropriate time. Roger had been an auditor for 30 years. He knew what stalling sounded like. The second sign was 3 board members resigning on the same day. Cheryl Odom, Brian Weeks, and Laura Sinclair each sent identical letters, stating they were not fully informed about the pool project's financial details and could no longer serve in good conscience. They'd either coordinated or consulted the same lawyer. The third sign came from Todd Lanford himself. Brenda called him and asked about removing construction equipment from the pool site. She wanted to create distance between Lanford Construction and the project before the news story aired. Todd's answer was short and final. "I'm not touching anything on that property, Brenda. There's a court filing attached to that address. My attorney told me to stay completely away." For the first time in 8 years, Brenda Carmichael looked around and found no one willing to follow her orders. She drove to the county recorder's office and asked to withdraw the building permit application for the pool. The clerk at the window, a young woman with a patient expression and zero interest in Brenda's urgency, shook her head. "There's a legal hold on this file, ma'am. I can't release, modify, or withdraw any documents connected to this property until the hold is cleared by the court." "Who put the hold on it?" I'm not authorized to share that information. Brenda sat in her Escalade in the county parking lot for 20 minutes. Cal's friend at the courthouse saw her through the lobby window, hands shaking on the steering wheel, forehead pressed against the leather. Meanwhile, the dominoes inside the neighborhood kept falling. Roger Hale got his hands on a partial accounting, a contractor invoice that had been accidentally copied to the wrong email thread during the project. Todd Lanford had billed the HOA $180,000. Roger pulled comparable estimates from 3 other pool contractors in the San Antonio metro area. A gunite pool of identical size and specifications should have cost between $90,000 and $110,000. The difference was roughly $85,000. Money that went somewhere, but didn't go into the pool. Roger couldn't prove the destination yet, but the number spread through Ridgefield like a brush fire in August. Text messages, whispered conversations across back fences, pointed questions at the school pickup line. Where did the $85,000 go? Who got it? And who knew? The emergency meeting was set for Thursday evening at 7. Brenda wanted a vote to remove me from the community. She was going to get something she never saw coming. I pressed my only good suit that night. Lily watched me from the kitchen doorway while I ironed the collar on the counter. Are you going to a meeting, Daddy? Yes, sweetheart, an important one. Is the mean lady going to be there? I looked at my daughter. Ellen's eyes, Ellen's stubborn chin, standing barefoot in the kitchen of the house her mother picked from a hospital bed. She'll be there, but tonight she's going to learn something important. What? I hung the suit on the bedroom door handle and smiled. That you don't build a swimming pool on somebody else's land. The Ridgefield Estates Community Center had never held 94 homeowners at once. Normally, these meetings drew 20 or 30 people, half of them dozing by the second agenda item. But word had traveled. About the pool, about the money, about the reporter. And tonight, the beige box with the bad lighting was standing room only. Folding chairs packed the floor in rows of 12. People lined the walls and crowded the doorway 3 deep. The AC unit rattled and groaned, losing its fight against 94 bodies and a July evening in South Texas. Nina Salazar sat in the 3rd row with a cameraman beside her. She held a small notepad in her lap and looked perfectly calm, like a woman who'd walked into rooms like this before and already knew how the story ended. Phil Dunaway, the county building inspector, stood near the emergency exit in khaki pants and a department polo, arms crossed, jaw tight. Janet Pryor had asked him to attend. He'd reviewed the permit file that morning. I sat in the last row with Janet beside me. She had a leather portfolio balanced on her knee. Inside it was every document we'd spent 4 months collecting. Brenda opened the meeting at 7 sharp. She stood behind the folding table at the front of the room, flanked by the 2 remaining board members, both of whom looked like they were attending their own sentencing. She wore a cream blazer and pearl earrings. Her smile was tight enough to crack porcelain. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have one agenda item, a motion regarding the ongoing compliance issues with Lot 47. She launched into a prepared speech about community standards, homeowners who undermine the collective good, and the necessity of protecting property values. She spoke for 4 minutes without once saying my name. She didn't need to. Every person in that room knew exactly who she was talking about. When she finished, she called for a motion to vote on what she described as a formal community response to ongoing non-compliance. Before anyone could raise a hand, I stood up. Before any vote takes place, I'd like to present something to the homeowners. Brenda's jaw tightened. Mr. Tillman, this isn't the time for... I'm a homeowner in good standing. I have a right to address this body during open comment. Article 8, Section 3 of the CC&Rs you wrote yourself. She couldn't argue with her own rulebook. She stepped back from the microphone. I walked to the front. Janet connected a laptop to the projector. The first image filled the screen behind Brenda, the original 2008 subdivision plat, zoomed in on Lot 47. This is the original plat map filed with Bexar County when Ridgefield Estates was developed. The strip of land Mrs. Carmichael has been calling HOA Common Area is labeled right here. I pointed at the screen. Lot 47B Extension. It is a private residential parcel. It has never been designated as common area. I clicked to the next slide. The deed chain. 3 transfers, each one carrying the extension with the primary lot. This land was sold by the developer to the first homeowner in 2009. It transferred through 2 subsequent sales. When I purchased my home in 2023, I acquired this parcel. It is recorded on my deed. I have been paying property taxes on it for 2 years. The room went silent. I could hear the AC unit rattling against the wall. I clicked again. The HOA Articles of Incorporation filled the screen. This is your founding document. It lists every common area parcel in this subdivision. Search it. Lot 47B extension does not appear anywhere. The HOA has never owned this land. I looked at Brenda. The color had drained from her face, like water from a cracked glass. Mrs. Carmichael spent $180,000 of your money building a swimming pool on my private property. Without my knowledge, without my consent, without ever verifying who owned the land she was building on. I clicked to the permit application. Douglas Carmichael's signature at the bottom. Lanford Construction listed as the contractor. The building permit for this pool was approved by Douglas Carmichael, Mrs. Carmichael's husband, in his capacity as County Planning Commissioner. The contractor is Lanford Construction, owned by Todd Lanford, Mrs. Carmichael's brother-in-law. No competitive bid was solicited. No conflict of interest was disclosed. Next slide. Two documents side by side. Cal's original meeting minutes on the left, Brenda's county filing on the right. The board vote that authorized this project required 4 members for a quorum. The original minutes show 3 votes, 1 short. The version filed with the county shows 5. 2 votes were added after the fact. The record was falsified. Phil Dunaway pushed off the back wall and walked to the front of the room. 94 heads turned to follow him. He pulled a folded document from his back pocket and held it at his side. Based on the documentation I reviewed this morning, the building permit for this pool facility was obtained under materially false circumstances. Effective immediately, I'm issuing a stop-use order on this structure pending a full review. Janet Pryor stood and addressed the room. A quiet title action has been filed in Bexar County District Court under Texas Property Code Section 22.001. Under Texas law, any permanent improvement constructed on Mr. Tillman's deeded property without his consent is the legal property of Mr. Tillman. The court will make the final determination, but the deed chain is unambiguous. Brenda's hands gripped the edge of the folding table so hard, her knuckles turned white. You can't. That pool cost. The community paid. I looked at her. The same way I looked at her the day she smashed my driveway. Calm. Level. Done. You built a $180,000 pool on my land, Brenda. Thank you. The room erupted, not in anger, in something closer to stunned release. The sound of 100 people realizing at once that the person they'd been told was the problem was actually the only one who'd been paying attention. The court ruling came 6 weeks later. Judge Ruth Calloway reviewed the deed chain, the certified survey, the HOA articles, and the construction records. Her opinion was 12 pages long, but the conclusion fit in a single sentence. Lot 47B extension and all permanent improvements constructed thereon are the deeded property of Garrett Tillman. I owned the pool. Brenda Carmichael was removed as HOA president by a special recall vote of 89-5. The 5 votes in her favor were her own, Douglas's, and 3 homeowners who later said they'd misread the ballot. The newly elected board, led by Roger Hale as president and Cal Henderson as secretary, immediately voided every fine Brenda had levied against me. The lien on my home was dissolved. My HOA account balance went from $23,000 in debt to 0. Douglas Carmichael resigned from the Bexar County Planning Commission 72 hours after the County Ethics Board opened a formal investigation. The inquiry didn't stop at the pool permit. Investigators found 4 other projects where Douglas had approved permits for contractors in Brenda's social network without disclosure. His resignation letter was 2 sentences long and cited personal and family considerations. Todd Lanford's problems were just beginning. The new HOA board filed a civil suit against Lanford Construction for the $85,000 discrepancy between the contract price and the estimated actual cost of the pool. Todd's attorney advised him to settle before discovery. He wrote a check for $62,000. The board used every cent to reimburse the special assessment that homeowners had been forced to pay. Nina Salazar's investigative segment aired on KSAT 12 the following Thursday evening. 7 minutes of documents, interviews, and footage from the community center meeting. Brenda declined to appear on camera. The piece closed with a slow, aerial shot of the pool, my pool, glittering in the afternoon sun, while Nina's voiceover explained that the woman who built it never owned the land beneath it. The Carmichaels listed their house 3 months later. It sold for $40,000 under the asking price to a young couple from Austin who had no idea who Brenda was. I heard they relocated to a gated community in Helotes. I'm sure they'll be very comfortable there, right up until Brenda starts telling someone how to mow their lawn. Now, about that pool, I could have filled it in. I could have fenced it off and let the Texas sun crack the concrete over a decade. That would have been the spiteful play. But spite wasn't what Ellen would have wanted. She was a fourth-grade teacher who spent her own paycheck on classroom supplies. She believed in things that helped people, not things that punished them. So I opened the pool to the neighborhood. $200 per household for the summer season. Reasonable price, less than half what a city pool membership costs, and a whole lot closer than the nearest public facility 30 minutes away. I hired a licensed pool maintenance company and purchased liability insurance because I'm a civil engineer and that's how my brain works. 68 families signed up the first summer. Lily was in the water every single afternoon. She taught herself to do a backflip off the pool's edge by the 4th of July. I sat on the stone deck with a book and a glass of sweet tea and watched her launch herself into the air, screaming with laughter, while the late sun turned the water the color of warm gold. 50% of the pool revenue goes into the Ellen Tillman Memorial Scholarship Fund, an annual award for a graduating senior at the high school that feeds from Lily's elementary. Ellen always said that the best investment is one somebody else gets to use. The first scholarship went to Parker Odom, Cheryl Odom's grandson, who started studying civil engineering at UT San Antonio this past fall. When I handed him the check, he shook my hand and said, "I heard your wife was an amazing teacher." I told him she was. The other 50% covers maintenance, insurance, and a small reserve. If the reserve ever exceeds $20,000, the excess rolls into the scholarship fund. The neighbors call it Tillman Pool. There's no official sign, no plaque on the fence. But last spring, Lily painted a flat river rock with the same stone pattern her mother chose from that hospital bed. The pattern that used to cover our driveway before Brenda smashed it to pieces, and set it on the ground beside the pool gate. Nobody has moved it. I don't think anyone ever will. I drive over a plain gray concrete driveway now. Builder grade, standard finish, nothing special to look at. But every time I pull in and see that turquoise water glittering through the wrought iron fence, I think about the woman who tried to take everything from me and ended up giving me something I never would have built on my own. Ellen would have loved that pool. She really would have.
So here's the thing about people like Brenda and Michael. They build little kingdoms out of clipboards and fake authority. They mistake fear for respect and silence for agreement. And they never check the paperwork. That's what brought her down. Not a screaming match. Paperwork. A plat map and a deed chain that any first-year paralegal could have pulled in 20 minutes. Garrett didn't win by being louder. He won by being more patient, more precise, and more prepared. He let her build a pool on his land, documented every step, and waited until the concrete dried before he showed his cards. That's not revenge, that's strategy. The real lesson isn't about pools or driveways, it's about knowing what you own. Know your deed, know your property lines, know your CC&Rs, know your property lines. The moment someone tries to take what's yours, the only thing standing between you and them is the records you kept. If you dealt with an HOA president who acted like the whole block, drop your story in the comments. I read everyone. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. A woman tried to condemn a veteran's barn and ended up paying for a bigger one. I'll see you there.